Welcome back to some more Material UI. I'm Myron, and I am going to be talking to you about how to customize your actual theme. We're going to start off just talking about theme colors and how to reset some of the colors in here. So like the blues, a little overly blue for me. If I'm going in and looking at the details, the buttons as well, right? They've got that same sort of blue. We've got the grays here, and then if we go to edit, right, like, I mean, it's all looking very put together, but it's not maybe exactly what I would like out of it. So from here, we've got Material UI in place. From the last video, you'll notice that I made some changes to the header as well, just to make sure that it was absolutely using the app bar component. The app bar component will just allow you to have this sort of header component up here. You can put a menu in there or whatnot, but I don't really have menu pages here. We're going to add pages into this a little bit later that actually need like navigation, but we navigate by going to like the details of an individual creature, and then we have the two navigation buttons kind of stepping us through the process. So from here, what we want to do is we want to take a look at what kind of things do we need to do in order to bring in some kind of customization for Material UI. So I'm going to go ahead and just start you right here on the home page of Material. So in Material, if we go to the navigation here, and we took a look at components, we've taken a look at component API, but what I want to do is come down here to customization. If you open up customization, you're going to see theming. This is, in general terms, the supersets that you get access to in your theming. We're going to specifically, now if you look at overview here, it'll give you kind of like a broad strokes of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be bringing in this theme provider component. We're going to be bringing in something called create MUI theme. So these are all things that we're going to bring in from Material UI, and they're going to allow us to manipulate the base theme that is out of the box here, right? So what I mean by out of the box is like we get the blue color here on the app bar. When we go to details, we've got the blue buttons. You know, we've got the gray chips here on our paper. So we want to change those things so that they look a little bit more customized. So first, what I'm going to do is take you into app.js. So you want to configure your custom theme settings from your app.js. So we'll jump over into app.js. The reason for this is because of how Material UI brings these things in. So we're going to bring in a couple of things from Material UI. Now you're going to notice that my import path looks a little bit different. We're going to do Material UI WAC core, but we're also going to do a WAC styles. So this is where they tuck all of their style customization pieces in on. So we're going to do that, and we want to bring in the two dependencies. So we mentioned theme provider, and the other one that we want is create MUI theme. These are our two major pieces here. Now, the reason that we're in app.js is because theme provider is actually a component, and it needs to wrap everything that you want to give this theme to. And for us, we want to give the custom theme to our entire application. So the highest level of our application is this app.js. So we can wrap our theme provider around the entire app content. So now everything that's wrapped in theme provider is going to get our custom material theme. Now, just wrapping it in theme provider is not going to be enough. We actually have to create a customized setup for it. And we're going to do that with create MUI theme. So we're going to create a variable called custom theme, and then that variable is going to come from invoking or calling create MUI theme. And then we pass an object that has all of the configurations that we want to customize for this new theme. And we'll get into these configurations in a minute, but this custom theme, we want to add this to theme provider, and we do that on an attribute called theme. and we just pass it our custom theme. So now our app's going to get our custom theme, but we haven't done anything different with it, right? It's just an object right now with no settings. We need some sort of settings. So we need our theme settings will go here. Now, one of the top level settings that I want to show you is palette. This is the one that you'll probably be adjusting most often. We'll show you a couple other ones as we go down the path, but we're going to primarily concentrate on palette right now. So one of the things you can do with palette is set a type. Now by default, it's in a light type, but as you saw when the two selections came up, we also have access to a dark type. So this is like a light theme and a dark theme. I'm going to save this and we're going to jump over to our app having changed it to dark because the default is light. So you can see that like our card has changed to a darker set. And if we click on here, we come in here and paper is a darker set. Go over to edit and you can see that the form fields are darker set. But I want you to take note that our content text and typography has not switched over. So if you want to swap that, you're going to have to customize the different typography individually rather than allowing the superset of the theme type to override it. Now, in my opinion, this is just kind of a flaw with Material UI. I would assume that if I set it to dark, it would just blanket update everything for me, but you're going to see that we have to take a little bit extra effort when we're setting up our typography stuff. And we'll take a look at the typography, what I mean by a little bit of extra effort on typography. But let's go back to our beginning here. I'm just going to go ahead and switch this, comment this out, right? But I wanted to show you that you can switch between light and dark. If we switched it back over to light, you'll just notice that it looks like what we had before. Paper's white. So they've got some out-of-the-box, just like quick switch if you wanted to do that. Now, we're going to comment this out. I'm going to put dark back in here just so that we know that dark is available. But what we really want to do is we want to take a look at, okay, well, how do we change things like the blue or these blue buttons, right? Well, if we come over here and we take a look at palette, and we scroll down, we can see a setup here of how this works. Now, you can see palette, primary light, palette, primary main. You can see some options here being passed through create an UI theme. And this is the major one that I want to point out. They have a whole bunch of built-in colors that you can just use. So what I mean by a whole bunch of built-in colors, you're going to look over here on the left-hand side to customization, and there's a color section. I'm going to open this in a new tab, and you're going to notice that they have a whole bunch of color options that you can just use. So they have a whole bunch, and they have names, but you have to import these specifically. And if you look in their documentation, you can see that you have to import them individually. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick a couple and we're going to switch some stuff out. But what I want you to take note of on the palette page here is we've got primary, secondary, error, warning, info, and success. So we can set each one of these. So over in my app.js, I'm just going to outline them. So we've got primary, secondary. Now we're mostly using primary on our app, so if we update secondary and we update any of the other ones, we probably won't see it too well, but we'll change some of our component settings so that we can see those in action. So we've got secondary, we've got error, warning, info, success. And these are the major colors that we can alter. So for instance, when we have a button like we do on our details page, so let's go over to our details page here real quick. So when we have a button over here, right, we've got our navigational buttons, so we've got back and edit. We can see that we're setting color to primary. Right, this primary is actually the primary that we're about to set over here. So I'm going to bring in a color for our testing. Now, again, pay attention to the import path here, because it's not just whack core. We need whack core, whack colors, and then we can pull off the colors that we're looking for. Now, the names that I'm going to put in here directly correspond to the names of the colors that we have in this tab over here. So if I want light blue, I'd have to put the word light blue. Let's do something a little more obvious. Let's take amber, for instance. So I should be able to do amber. And then down here on my primary, I can say amber. And now I'm using the appropriate amber color. Now I'm going to kind of swap out some of the other ones here too, just to give this a test. For secondary, we'll make it light green. Now, again, I'm not choosing these colors because they're going to be pretty, because these are not going to be pretty next to each other. I'm just choosing some colors so that we can see the changes here. Alright, so we've got all of the colors imported. I've saved my file. Now if we come back, we should see the difference. Now like I said, most of our stuff's just primary, but we've got secondary, error, warning, info, and success all available to us. Just some components don't have access to certain things. Now, I'm going to take the amber, for instance, and we're going to set one of the buttons to the secondary. So let's take right here on the details. We've got primary on the back button, but we'll set secondary on the edit. And then if we look at our app, now you see our app bar changed too, right? This is changing to the primary color, that amber color. And it's intelligent enough that when it was the blue, it had white text, but it has the dark text on the lighter amber color. So there's a lot of intuitive things going on in the background, which is why we want to go through the custom settings of the theme. And you can totally see that the secondary is working over here. We have the edit with the green, and we have the primary with our amber. And if we come on down, these are still just the default grays. And then same thing here. Now, one of the things you'll notice on the form fields, it actually takes the primary color as its focus color, which is a little hard to read on this background, but like I said, we're just testing out, seeing how these colors kind of change things for us, right? All of the buttons are changed everywhere. Like, that is really handy, right? Everything's still consistent because we're still using all of the Material UI things. So this is how we, at its core, change a color. Now you'll notice when we look at colors here, they also have these numbers down here. Now we can specify something much more specific, like light green at A100. If we look at the documentation here, you'll see an example of it in the documentation. You'll see this represents our color import, or our hue import, meaning that this is like the red hue, the pink hue, the purple hue, and then we give it the shade, which is going to be whatever number this is. So if, for instance, let's take that, what was it? Was it lime or was it light green? Let's double check what we got in our app.js for secondary. So secondary is the light green. So light green, let's say we wanted to get this like A200 here instead, right? So if we wanted to get the A200, we would have to pass it to pull it off of light green. So it would look something like this. We create a new variable, const I'm just going to say new light green. Not going to get too creative with the names here. And we'll take the light green and then brackets, and then we need to do the A100. Now this is all because of the syntax that they're showing us in the import here. So this is how we get that separate color off. So now instead of passing light green, we should be able to pass the new light green to the secondary. Error. Right? The color provided to augment color is invalid. The color object needs to have a main property or a A400 property. So what this is meaning is that when we have, so we can absolutely pull off these individual colors, but we need to get a little bit more precise with how we're doing our color setup. So this syntax that we have here, this takes in the core light green, and then it's able to pull off all of the variations here that it would need. But if we want to put something specific in, what we have to do is we have to change to a different kind of syntax. So we're going to open up an object here. Now each one of these can accept this object. So let's say, for example, we've got secondary here, and there's a couple of properties we can have. We can have light, main, dark, and contrast text. So these are your primary options. The only one that is absolutely required is main. We have to set it on main. So now we can take this color and set that on main. So what this will do, without us setting a custom light and a custom dark, it will augment from this specific color, and it'll give us some variations for the light and dark. It'll also kind of take care of the contrast text on its own as well. So we don't need dark, light, or contrast, but we do need main if we want to change the color. So if we come back over to our app, we can see that we've got that new lighter lime green look. So you can see though, when I'm hovering, right, it's changing dark. So it's already taking care of the dark and the contrast text. I mean, if we were to put in contrast text here and I think this is going to be an orange. I'm trying to do it off the top of my head. FB9934, I think. 9934. Okay, so it's like an orange, not a red. But point being, we can change what the contrast text is. Right? So you have full customization here if you need it. And as we saw, it doesn't support the word color. It supports hex codes. It supports RGB. I don't know if it supports anything past hex codes and RGB. I'd have to look that up. But I do know that it does support hex code and RGB. I'm going to primarily work with hex code while I'm showing you how to go through this. But for right now, like, this gives us all the customization that we would need to start sort of customizing things. But I need a plan, right? Like, it's great that I can customize things. Like, don't get me wrong, I love to be able to customize things. But I do want to come in and actually have some sort of plan. So in order to plan, what I would normally do is I would bring up some site that I want to use for reference. Now, I specifically like looking at Dribbble. It's got a lot of options in here. There's a lot of creative people out there doing some really cool things, and you can see what they're doing. And this is where I like to go for something to inspire me to make it. So I'm going to go to my collection here. I've put together some. You can see just sort of, all across the board. They're not particularly consistent. I've got some dark themes. I've got some light themes. But I think what we're going to go for is this one here. So what I'm going to do is actually take a screenshot, Command-Shift-4 on a Mac. So I'm going to do my screenshot here. So that'll automatically go over to my desktop. And I'm going to show you another site here now. It's a site by Adobe. It's color.adobe.com. So specifically, you're looking for color.adobe.com. So once we go there, what you're going to notice is it's kind of a color picker. So if you knew what you were going after, or you knew you wanted to go monochrome, you wanted something that was triad, right? Like, you could totally go after whatever you want and customize it. But the feature that I particularly like here is if you go to extract theme, it gives you the ability to select an image from your desktop. So I'm going to go ahead to my desktop where it saved the screenshot. I'm going to open that up inside of here, and it's automatically going to pick some colors for me. Now, I'm going to kind of move this around until I get the colors that I want. So I'm going to get maybe this like darker teal color right in here, kind of like that, and then maybe this orange color down here. We've got the darker orange here, so I like that. We've got the lighter orange up here, that's good. And then I do like the tealy green color here, so we'll use that as well. Alright, so here are my colors. Now the beauty of this website, so nicely putting all this together for me, is that I can click here and it automatically saves it to my clipboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record these colors inside of my document here. So just underneath where we're importing the Material UI colors, I'm going to go ahead and record theme colors. So what I've got here is that dark teal, and it's not really a dark teal, but we're not going to mince words too much here. And then we're going to grab the light teal, and again, I just click here and I can get that right in my clipboard, paste it in, and then the next one is this gold orange. So the gold orange here, or maybe the lighter version here. Yeah, we'll take the lighter version. Which actually, this one kind of looks like the amber that we were using earlier. Right? So, I mean, you could decide to go with the amber, but I want to be specific. I want to get a color palette that I'm specifically grabbing here. I'm going to call this burnt umber. Again, this is not specifically burnt umber, but it's got that kind of feel to it. And this is like a beige pink. Alright, so I've got some base colors to work with. I actually wouldn't mind working with this lighter tan color either. So I'm going to take one of my selectors and move it over there real quick so I can grab that and put that in as well. Okay, so I've got some colors to work with here, and this is how I'm going to start setting up my theme. So what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing those into their specific areas. So for my primary, I'm actually going to use this amber color, I'm thinking. So on my primary, instead of amber here, I'm going to go ahead and open this up and use main. Now remember, I have access to light, dark, and contrast text, but I'm just going to use main, and I'm going to pass it a string value of that hex code. And then I'm basically going to kind of do the same thing for the other stuff here. Do the secondary as well. And I'm thinking for the secondary, maybe we go with like the darker teal. Yeah, let's do that. Just so that we've got like, you know, some good contrast. We'll see how it works, right? Like we're implementing. And then could do the same things on these other ones. Could potentially not do anything for these. I'm going to change the info one for sure, I think. And we'll change the info one to... I'm thinking maybe that peachy, this beigey, peachy thing. So we've got that, and then I'm going to kind of just leave these as their defaults for now, and we'll see what we want to do as we go a little bit deeper into this. Now, remember, I just replaced the color here, but like we have here, I need an object with the name property. So I'm going to go ahead and put an object with the main property. And, right, I mean, it could just be that. It doesn't have to have all of the other stuff, the light, the dark, the contrast text. Like, this would be adequate. I'm going to save that real quick. And then we're going to come back over. And we've got something that's you know, starting to take a little shape here. Right, so that's not too bad. We've got there, and we've got here. Kind of thinking that I want the app bar to be the darker color, like maybe this dark teal. So let's go ahead over to the header, and we're going to look at app bar here. And app bar, we should be able to pass it a color and give it our secondary. And sure enough, yeah, I kind of like the darker teal-y color up here. That's not bad. And then let's go back to the list. Right, not much difference on the list. Like the paper's all still white here. Now we are going to get like super customized in here. For example, these buttons don't really look too much like what we've got going on over here in my sample. Right, so if I want to get a little bit more like this sample, I maybe need like some edged corners and a dark border around it. Actually, a relatively thick dark border too. So I might want to go that route and see what I've got. So that's what we're going to head towards, like making it look even more like what we have going on here. But right now I still have this, you know, like lighter gray color in the background. I'm going to change it out for what we recorded as that tan. So this light tan. But this is actually in custom CSS. So I've got to go over to my custom CSS and index CSS. And I've got my body background here. And I'm just going to paste that in there. So when we come back over, hey, right? Like this is looking a little bit. Now it's even like starting to get a little more into this vein right here, right? That's not too bad. So we're starting to get a little bit closer there. Now the next thing that we want to do is maybe take a look at some more customization options. So if we're over here, we've got palette, we've got typography. Now remember I said that typography gets handled a little bit different than the palette here, right? So if you scroll down, you can see more options for how to pass this in. You can see the option of changing the hue and shade like we showed before. And you can even set it up so that these are dynamic so that you can have people choose it in your app, switch between particular themes. Now we're going to get a little bit deeper into this as we go on, but just be aware that that's what this is referring to. When you see something on here and it's saying like palette.error.light, it's specifically referencing in our app.js the properties that we're passing to it. So specifically, like we've got palette here, and then it was .error, right? So it would have been .error, and then .light, which would have been like a light option on error. Or for like secondary, it'd be palette.secondary.light or .main, right? So that's how we're accessing the colors and how we're defining what we want the color to be. Now back over here, I'm just going to keep jumping between my sample here and then what we've got going on the page. Actually I'm going to see if this one's just a little bit different. Oh, that is just a little bit different in there somewhere. Yeah, I think that one's better, actually. So now remember, it is pulling that off of a screenshot, so like it's as accurate as it can get. But it's still nice because it still is in the same vein of what we had before. So we'll save that. We'll edit this one. Yeah, I like that. It's just a little bit better, right? It doesn't seem like it's that much, but just a little bit better. All right, so from here, the main thing that I want to concentrate on are the buttons right now, because I want to give them a treatment that really makes them look a lot like what we have going on maybe like right here. Right now, obviously, it's using the dark orange. We're using, a lighter orange. I don't think we're using the dark on it. Yeah, we're using the amber on it, right? So it's going to be amber. We could potentially set it up so that this dark orange is actually our secondary, right? And then we'd have the dark orange for it. But if we did that, it would change the secondary button here, but it would also change the secondary that we're using on the header as well. So just something to be aware of. But let's go ahead and take a look at how we'll get these colors across so that this thing can look a little bit more like that. But let's also maybe give our text some treatment. So let's take like the burnt umber and make our headings the burnt umber. Specifically, we're going to look at typography here. Now in typography, we can set it up so that typography gets any kind of style we want it to have, but we have to use typography. Now we can set a base, like we can set some sort of font family as we deem it. And then the other thing that we can do is override specific things. So you're noticing theme.typography.h3. So if I wanted to change only the headings, I would have to target like H1 through H6. What this is going to look like in our app.js, and actually before we do that, let's go ahead and just commit our code. So I've got my terminal here that's not running my server or my client side, and we'll just go ahead and commit here. All right, so we've got that. Now, we want to come in, and this is no longer in palette. Because I want you to take note of what it had here, theme.typography. So this is at the first level of our theme being the configuration that we have here for this object. Right? So it's this object represents theme. So it was theme.typography, so we actually need a typography property on here. Now we could do something like, just to show you, we could do font weight bold. Now, typically when we're doing CSS, we write font dash weight, right? In our material UI here, when we're doing a property for the style, we actually don't use the dash, and we capitalize the first letter right after the dash. So it'd be font capitalized W weight. And this goes for any property that you're going to use. That's how you would do it. And then we've got bold as a string on the other side. So if we save this and we come over and we look at our app, we're going to see that we've made some things. Now you see it's trying to make things bold, right? Like that's what its purpose is. But each one of these is assigned a variant. So they're specifically working with a variant. So anything that we use that's not using a variant will use whatever the default is. But everything that's using a variant is going to use the custom styling that's set up for that variant. So if we want to change all of the headings, we need to target those headings specifically. Now I do want to show you something if we come back over here. Some of these, right, these weren't using typography specifically set up by us. Right? So they're going to look a little bit different as we start to change things. But let's go back over to our details and let's get all of the headings to just be the same burnt umber color. So if we want to target a heading, we target what that variant was. So it's going to be the name of the variant. And the variant was H1. And then we had H1 all the way through H6. So I'm just going to rapidly do this. Alright, so now if we go back over, we can see that all of those variants have all been affected. Right, which that doesn't look too bad. And we go a little bit more bold here. So now I've made all of my headings bold, and they all get the burnt umber. Now you're going to notice, I'm going to go back to list. Inside of our component, we were using card on these, but card header was actually using this setup. So it was using typography with a specific variant in it to give us this setup up here. So that's why that has changed, because we've changed all of our heading variants. Now let's say we want to change our body and that color as well. So let's do body 1, because that was one of the typography variants. And I'm just going to do color, and I'm going to do something that's like an off black. So we're going to do, yep. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for body 2 as well, because I'd like them both to be the same color. Now it's not going to seem too visible, but it's more of a dark gray than a just straight black. So a little bit more clean. Like I like that a little bit more. Like it's slightly subtler, you know, a little bit more subtle. It's not quite as overt, but still keeping in the same vein as things. Now, obviously we want to get in and we want to get a little bit more detailed here, right? So what kind of other settings could we potentially do, right? We want to override so that paper's maybe not this stark white, because if we get back to the list, like this is pretty, you know, in our face and doesn't look so much like what we've got going on here, right? We could use like the lighter green, we could use like the darker orange, and that would still put us in a better place. But for right now, we've set some base colors, we've altered them around a little bit, but for our immediate purposes, we've got an idea of how we can theme things. All right, so we've taken a look at the primary, secondary, error, warning, info, and success colors that are available to us. These become properties on like our buttons here, right? We set color to secondary. So it's something that we have access to now on anything that accepts any of those options. Same thing went for our header. Right? We decided to use the secondary in our app bar. Now, if we look up the documentation for app bar, let's look up the API documentation actually. So over here, if I look at color, I can see all the colors I have at my fingertips. But I only have access to primary and secondary from the ones that I set up in my theming. Right? Otherwise, it's default, inherit, or transparent. So good to keep in mind if we want to leverage those colors without customizing the header too much. But we are going to get into like how we customize, because I really want to get into this button and get this button customized to something that's going to be a little bit more in line with what we have going on over here. But for right now, I want to leave it at this. You've got an idea of how to alter some of these theme settings. We looked at how to alter typography and the variants inside of typography. And you can add in whatever kind of CSS property you can think of in here to alter that text. We could add underlines. We could make it italicized. It just depends on what treatment we want for that particular thing. So please come join me next time where we start diving into how do we customize like the core set of what makes a button view. All right, thank you very much.